As we learned in part 1, Lee Nok, Trong's wife, asked Chow to teach that girl a lesson. Chow then ordered his subordinates to purchase acid for the attack. On the evening of August 21st, around 8 p.m., after secretly monitoring near the victim's house, Chow's group spotted my van leaving. However, as it was still early and many locals were around, they didn't dare act immediately. Instead, they quietly followed her from a distance, waiting for the right moment. Shortly after, they saw my van meeting another girl, Deep Ann, and the two headed towards the outskirts of the village. Chow's group accelerated to keep up and noticed two young men waiting for my van and Deep Ann there. Seeing that the remote area was ideal for their plan, the group drove closer and threw acid at all four individuals. Unfortunately for them, the bumpy road caused their aim to falter, and the acid only slightly hit one of the young men with my van. Chow also accidentally splashed acid onto his own arm, forcing him to seek treatment at the hospital later that night. The head injury Chow suffered was from a retaliatory attack by one of the young men using a brick. Through verification, it was confirmed that Chow's subordinates had purchased acid at a chemical store in Gun Tai district. Multiple witnesses also testified that Chow's group left the village at around 9 p.m. on August 21st. Additionally, the forensic results of semen samples collected from the bodies of the two victims were sent from the Ministry of Public Security to the Kam Tuk Provincial Police. The investigators were astonished to find their initial suspicions correct. Two different semen samples were discovered on the bodies of the women. This confirmed that the crime was not committed by a single individual. Semen samples from Lao Chow and his two accomplices involved in the acid attack were also analyzed but did not match any of the samples found on the victims. At this point, a major disagreement arose within the investigation team. Some investigators believed that the two tall young men accompanying my van and Deep Ann were highly likely to be the culprits. However, others argued that this was illogical. Why would these two men harm the beautiful women they had risked themselves to protect during the acid attack? To resolve this conflict, the most critical task for the investigators was to quickly identify the two tall young men. Based on Lao Chow's and his subordinates' descriptions, the two individuals who accompanied the victims on the night of the crime were young, very well built, and physically imposing. Notably, one of them had strikingly unique long hair, reminiscent of a historical drama character, dyed golden yellow. He even wore a cloak, making him look like a television drama actor. Lao Chow also insisted that he had indeed splashed acid on one of the two men during the attack. The investigation team immediately launched a search for the two unidentified young men along two specific directions. First direction. Using the description of their appearance and attire, investigators began a thorough search of Luk Kai village and nearby localities. Second direction. Investigating all hospitals and pharmacies near the crime scene. The assumption was that if the two men were burned by Chow's acid, they would need to seek treatment or purchase medication for their injuries. The first investigation team conducted a sweep of 7 villages surrounding Luk Kai and directly interrogated over 800 people. They identified 43 young men with dyed yellow hair and narrowed it down to 6 suspects with exceptional physical stature. However, after thorough screening and verification, all 6 men had alibis for the night of the crime. At this point, the lead about their physique and hair had reached a deadlock. The only remaining clue was the peculiar cloak described by Lao Chow and his subordinates. After searching and collecting 9 similar cloak samples, the investigators presented them to Lao Chow for identification. At first glance, he immediately recognized the style of the traditional cloak. Further investigation revealed a highly valuable lead. The cloak was rarely sold and, in Gun Tai County, it was only available at certain fixed marketplaces. This aligned perfectly with the timeline, as both my van and Deep Ann had visited a local market for shopping the day before their murder. The investigators hypothesized that the market could hold crucial clues, given the striking beauty of the two girls and the distinct appearance of the two tall young men. Surely, someone would have noticed them. A team of investigators was dispatched to the Gun Tai market, focusing on clothing stores. After 2 hours of searching, they discovered a shop that sold the traditional cloak. The shop owner explained that the market operates on a grand scale once a week, and his store serves a large number of young customers. The specific cloak style had been sold over 40 times on the day in question, so the owner couldn't recall every customer. However, when prompted about a tall man with long hair, he remembered selling the largest sized cloak to a customer with very long hair. The shop owner even mistook him for a television actor due to his striking height and handsome appearance. Interestingly, this man had black hair, not yellow, as initially suggested by the investigators. Clearly, Lao Chao had confirmed that the young man accompanying the victims had yellow hair. Could there have been a misunderstanding here? After so much effort to find this valuable lead, could it all be a mistake? However, one investigator analyzed the situation and noted, while the suspect's tall stature and striking appearance couldn't change so quickly, hair color definitely could. At this time, it wasn't unusual for young men to dye their hair. Immediately, the investigators focused their search on local hair salons and beauty shops. There were plenty of such shops in the marketplace. After meticulous investigation, they found a hair salon where two young men had been. The salon owner was deeply impressed by their appearance, describing them as tall and handsome like movie stars. One of them had very long hair, which he dyed yellow on the afternoon of August 20th. He also had a beautiful rose tattoo on his neck. Through conversation, the shop owner learned that these two young men weren't locals, they were from Gansu Province. She overheard them say they came here because they had heard that many beautiful girls often appeared at the weekly market gatherings. The salon owner even confirmed to the police that she had overheard their conversation. The two were enthusiastically discussing their plan to meet two beautiful women they had just met at the foot of some mountain that evening. With these newly uncovered leads, the police were thrilled, feeling that the mystery of this case might finally be close to being solved. Finally, the case began to have a foundation and gradually became clearer. These two handsome and charming young men were likely to have befriended my Van and Deep Ann, lured them to the deserted hillside, and then assaulted and murdered them. The second line of investigation, although having visited all the clinics and hospitals around Luke Kai village to search for information about a tall young man with acid burns on his left arm, yielded no results. Refusing to give up, investigators expanded their search to smaller medical facilities and pharmacies, eventually uncovering a crucial lead. At around 2 a.m. on August 21st, at a pharmacy near the Guntai railway station, the pharmacist was awakened by loud knocking. Because it was late at night, he was cautious and feared it might be robbers pretending to be customers to commit crimes. Therefore, he did not open the door but communicated from inside. Two young men were requesting bandages and burn treatment ointment. Interestingly, they had no money and offered to leave a gold bracelet as collateral in exchange for the medicine and some cash. Although frightened by these strange customers, the pharmacist saw this transaction as a good deal and agreed. He even instructed one of them on how to use the medicine from inside the store. Afterward, the two men asked about the earliest train departing for Tanhai, and the pharmacist willingly provided them with the information about that train. The investigators were one step too late. The train from Guntai to Tanhai had already departed. Information about the two highly dangerous suspects was immediately sent to the Railway Police Bureau for coordination. Given the potential risk posed by the suspects, the railway police decided not to arrest them on the train to avoid endangering other passengers. Instead, they organized a plan to intercept and arrest them as soon as the train arrived at the next station. This plan received enthusiastic cooperation from the Tanhai Provincial Police Bureau. As soon as the train arrived at the station, the two suspects were promptly apprehended by Railway Police and Tanhai Police, then handed over to the Guntuk Police, who were handling the investigation. The suspects were identified as Luke Nguyen and Lu The Quan, both 21 years old, from Dongmyan County, Tanhai Province. At the police station, faced with questions from investigators, both Luke Nguyen and Lu The Quan stubbornly denied their involvement in the crime. They insisted they had only met the two victims at the market earlier that day. Due to their similar ages and good communication skills, they struck up a conversation and convinced the two young women to meet them at the foothills of Luke Kai village. The foothills were chosen as the meeting point because my Van and Deep Ann were well aware of the conservative and territorial nature of the local young men. If outsiders visited, the local men would often find ways to cause trouble. To avoid such issues, the two girls selected a remote location. After unexpectedly being attacked by Lao Chao's group at the village's edge, Luke Nguyen shielded his girlfriend and suffered burns on his left arm. Despite his injuries, he tried to appear brave in front of the beautiful young women to quickly win their hearts. When the two couples reached the foot of the mountain, they were suddenly stopped by a masked man armed with a gun. Fully understanding the gravity of the situation, the four obeyed his demands. Luke Nguyen and Lu the Quan handed over all their money and belongings. Due to the dim moonlight, Lu the Quan managed to secretly hide a gold bracelet, a keepsake from his grandmother, in the grass by the roadside. After complying with all the demands, Nguyen and Quan were driven out of the mountain and threatened that if they dared to return, the bullets from the gun would end up in their skulls. Frightened, Luke Nguyen and Lu the Quan fled and hid in a cornfield at the foot of the mountain, waiting for the two girls to return. However, they waited until 2 a.m., but my van and Deep Ann never came back. The burn on Lu the Quan's arm grew increasingly painful, but having no money left, he decided to sneak back to retrieve the hidden gold bracelet. Upon approaching the area, they noticed a fire burning on the mountain. Following the flames, they were horrified to discover the two beautiful young women had been burned to death. At that moment, they were also chased and attacked by a hunting dog, presumably brought along by the perpetrator. Terrified, they fled down the mountain and left Gun Tai before dawn. The police questioned why they didn't return to the village to report the incident. Lu the Quan admitted that they were afraid of retaliation from the village youths, so they cowardly hid in the cornfield. Their decision to return to the mountain wasn't out of concern for the girls but rather to retrieve the valuable gold bracelet that the Quan had hidden in the grass. Afterward, they accidentally discovered the charred bodies of my van and Deep Ann on the mountaintop. Out of fear, they fled the scene, went to the pharmacy to exchange items for money, and then left the area. The conflicting statements from Luke Nguyen and Lu the Quan completely failed to satisfy the investigators. However, the results of the semen sample tests showed that their DNA did not match the semen found in the bodies of the two victims. Once again, the investigation's direction had to change. At the time, in 1996, the use of hunting rifles was not uncommon in remote mountainous rural areas. However, the gun described by Luke Nguyen and Lu the Quan was very unique, with an unusually large length and caliber. Additionally, the suspect was described by witnesses as being short and having a heavily lisped voice. Based on these clues, the police expanded their investigation in multiple directions to quickly apprehend this dangerous murderer. All hunters living in the area were immediately identified and checked. A team of investigators was also dispatched to major markets to gather information about individuals who sold animals they had hunted in the mountains. During this process, the police received critical information from wildlife traders at the market. They pointed to a hunter named Keen Hua, who owned a homemade hunting rifle with a length and caliber that perfectly matched the witness's description. Moreover, Keen Hua was known to be very short and an extraordinarily skilled marksman. The name Keen Hua was promptly added to the list of highly dangerous suspects in this case. At the time of the incident, Keen Hua's wife and family confirmed that he had gone hunting in the forest with a friend and had not yet returned. Furthermore, Hua owned a hunting dog that was both aggressive and intelligent. Immediately, a highly trained special task force equipped with modern weaponry, along with forest rangers, was deployed to secretly comb the dense forests behind Thon Luc Khai and the old-growth woods of Gun Tai district to track down the suspect in this serious case. The reason multiple suspects were pursued was due to the forensic results revealing two different semen samples in the bodies of the two female victims, indicating that the crime could not have been committed by Keen Hua alone. While the special task force searched the forest, another team in plain clothes monitored Keen Hua's home. At 3 a.m. on August 26, 1996, 5 days after the crime, during their surveillance, the police detected a barking dog and saw a short-statured man sneaking toward the house. Without hesitation, the officers quickly subdued and arrested the suspect. Upon searching him, investigators found two wallets belonging to Luke Nguyen and Lu the Quan hidden in Keen Hua's backpack. During questioning, Keen Hua quickly confessed to his crimes. He revealed that on August 17, he had left home to go hunting in an old forest about 2 kilometers away from the mountain near Thon Luc Khai. Keen Hua's usual work was quite smooth. With just a few days of hunting in the forest, his family could afford to cover living expenses for the entire month without much hardship. However, during this hunting trip, for some inexplicable reason, none of the traps he set yielded any catch. Meanwhile, his child at home still needed money for medical treatment. Although he had run out of food, Quinoa knew that on the mountain behind Thon Luc Kai, there was a cornfield ready for harvest. Taking a risk, he sneaked down to steal some corn to sustain himself. Around 10 p.m. on August 20th, while coming down the mountain, Quinoa suddenly spotted two couples approaching. Quietly observing, he noticed that the two young men had a stylish appearance and fashionable hairstyles, which made him decide to rob them. Masking his face, Quinoa ambushed them, threatened them, and took two bulging wallets from the group. However, after acquiring the money, Quinoa was stunned by the beauty of the two young women accompanying them. Overcome by his vile desires, he forced the women up to the grassy area on the mountain, tied their hands and feet, and proceeded to rape them. After satisfying his lust, Quinoa initially intended to let them go. At this point, however, Deep Anne, filled with anger and despair, resisted. She cursed him and swore to report him to the police to make him pay for his crimes. Hearing this, Quinoa became terrified that his actions would be exposed. Despite Mai Van kneeling and begging on behalf of her friend, Quinoa picked up a large rock and struck Deep Anne repeatedly until she lay motionless. At that moment, Quinoa transformed into a bloodthirsty monster. In his frenzy, he repeated his actions, and Mai Van also met a tragic end under the blows of the heavy rock wielded by Quinoa. Afterward, he gathered dry firewood to burn the two corpses and quietly left the scene. Upon reconstructing the crime scene, the police retrieved a large rock stained with the victim's blood, which had been thrown down the cliff. However, why were there two different semen samples found in the victims' bodies? Quinoa could not answer this question. The semen did not belong to Lao Chao's group, nor did it match Luke Nguyen or Lu the Quan. Quinoa admitted to the murders of the two victims. On September 10, 1996, Quinoa was sentenced to death by the People's Court of Gansu Province, and the execution was carried out immediately. Although the perpetrator paid the price for his heinous acts, the public in Gun Tai County remained deeply unsettled for a long time, as the mystery of the unidentified semen samples had not been resolved. Even though some of the investigators involved in the case had retired, the search for clues about the semen samples continued with the efforts of the subsequent police teams. What are your thoughts on this case? Please share your opinions in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to join us in uncovering more legendary criminal cases. Thank you all.